One of our most requested comments and actually a lot of emails that we get are to do with assessment centers. So, of course, we have produced lots and lots of videos about how to pass the interview for different companies. But the next thing that you have after an interview is an assessment center. And this week we put a message out to our mailing list, which if you're not a part of, then you should subscribe, and you can do so down below in the description because we send out emails every day. And I said, oh, hey, we were going to do an assessment center bundle. How many people are interested? And we got loads of replies. And I was like, holy cow. And then I looked on YouTube for information about assessment centers, and it was really sparse. And what was there wasn't very good. So this is the first of probably a couple of different videos about acing assessment centers, what to expect, basically. Because for many people, this is sort of the final stage before you get a job. And bizarrely, you kind of like won't be prepared, won't really know what to do. So hopefully this video is really going to help you just to understand what you can expect at an assessment center. Let's get started with the slideshow. Okay, cool. So acing assessment centers. Oh, let's hide this. Here's what we're going to talk about. So when will you get it? What is it and what's in it? The 7 exercises you would get or could get and how you can prepare for it. When is it? So when is an assessment center? So it's generally the last stage of most companies' application process. You could have a partner interview or final interview. Most companies don't do that anymore because it's just additional time. So nowadays, what I've observed with a lot of companies is they use super days. So super days are quite common in Asia, particularly in China, where you've got a lot of candidates. So you'll just have a partner, a director, or a series of people who just churn out lots and lots of interviews on the same day. A couple of years ago, so when I first started training people in 2013, a partner interview would be like a separate thing that you will have. And we'll talk about that briefly today, the final interview. It could be up to 8 weeks after you pass your interview. And nowadays, in the application process, the biggest time that you will wait is for the assessment center. So you could literally submit an application, do an online test, and do a video interview in days, like in less than a week. And then you're kind of sitting there agonizing, waiting to find out whether you've got to an assessment center or whether you're going to have an assessment center. And you might think, well, why is this? This is outrageous. What is this all about? It's basically because the company has to marshal together quite a lot of resources. They're going to want to get as many people through an assessment center as possible. So they'll want to get as many groups together, whether that be 20 people, 50, 100 people or more. I know that there have been some super days that our clients have gone to, and there was like 200 or 300 candidates there on the day. Most companies use these as the final stage. Some companies might just use a series of interviews, kind of going up the hierarchy. Banks are a good example of this, not for all roles, but for some roles where you'll do a HR screener, then you'll interview with a member of the team, then maybe a director of the team that you'll be working with. But most companies will have an assessment center. It's difficult to find the figures. So really, this is based on my experience of preparing a lot of people for assessment centers. I reckon I've spent about 3,000 hours training people for assessment centers. And I used to do it face to face for 5 years. I would do that with 4 groups every week. I'd do that 2 days a week. So I'd say about 5% of candidates make it to the assessment center, but that's at best. A good way to think about it is if you've got to the assessment center, technically you're good enough for the job. That's basically what they're saying. And then they want to sort of test other things. So what is it? It's basically a half to a whole day of exercises with your competition under observation. Obviously with COVID, there are still a lot of assessment centers which are virtual, but I've noticed that companies will now prefer to do face-to-face for a really simple reason. And that reason is when you're doing a group discussion, someone can, with the software, only one person can talk at a time. And I have had candidates report to me that an assessor has had to stop someone talking because they just wouldn't shut up and they wouldn't allow anybody else to talk. So face-to-face is preferable, but it's roughly an even split. That's what I've observed. And we have, clients and candidates going through that process all the time. So what's in it? You can expect an introduction, a lunch, and a chance to meet other people working at the company. And then like 2 to 3 other exercises. The introduction is basically like everybody meets up in a hall or a conference room and they tell you about the company and why it's great to work there. The lunch is just kind of like a break. The chance to meet other people is probably like graduates, or maybe you'll get some managers, senior managers, directors, Probably not partners, but just so you can sort of chat to people. But the other exercises are what's really important. Those are the things that are kind of getting assessed. So here are the 7 exercises that you can expect in an assessment center. Now, we'll caveat this. Somebody's bound to be out there and going, but I'm a software engineer and we do pairs coding, or we do. I'm not talking about technical exercises which are hyper specific to the role that you're applying to. I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who might be going for this. That's something you can prepare for, which is a side to this. So just for general mainstream roles, these are the 7 exercises you can expect, which is retesting, group discussion, written exercise, case study, role play, final interview, and presentations. Some are much more likely than others, to be frankly honest with you, and I'll discuss that as we move through each of those 7 exercises. So retesting, this is resitting online tests. You'll probably be expected to do numerical, logical, SJT, or verbal test. Why? It's really simple to catch people out who cheated on their original online test. We tend to see retesting in finance and in investment banks, and of course it's on a company specific basis, but this is a really clever way to sift people out who just cheated. Group discussions, this is reading and discussing material 3 to 5 other candidates. All the time while you're doing this, you're being observed by somebody, so the assessor kind of sits there and just watches how people interact with each other. It tends to be 30 minutes to an hour in length. I'd say you would expect it to be 30 to 45 minutes, with time set aside for you to read stuff and then time set aside for you to discuss stuff. These tend to resolve around a standard business problem, which is company A has a problem and which option would you choose from blah, 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 and why. More often than not, people will be given like standard material, which everyone will have, and also their own material. So they'll be given material for one solution. The mechanics behind this is really simple. It gives everybody the chance to talk. So they have to talk about their own exercise and what they have to do. Why are you asked to do this? It's just to see how you work with strangers under pressure. It mainly tests teamwork, but it tests a lot of skills: leadership, teamwork, problem solving, adapting under pressure, working towards a deadline. Group discussions are pretty common. And you should generally expect that you would get a group discussion. A written exercise, this is basically where you get to read a set piece of material and then you have to write out a business report. These are becoming increasingly less common. There used to be a time when you'd get these in almost every assessment center. Nowadays, you don't tend to get these so much. Again, it's the same type of thing. You're solving a standard business problem. These exercises don't tend to be very long, but it is important that you know how to write a business report, you know how to be objective, and also to kind of really summarize complex information in a simple fashion. So this is really testing your writing and reporting skills, and most importantly, your attention to detail, and also to be objective. A case study. So these are still reasonably quite common. I'd say they're more common than they were 5 years ago. Of course, if you're applying to do consulting or management consulting, this is probably something that you spend a lot of time on. One website, I don't tend to recommend a lot of websites, but one website that I love is managementconsulted.com. They've got phenomenal resources and services, and I've always really enjoyed reading their content. So you basically read a set piece of material and then you present your answers to the questions to an assessor, and potentially also answer questions as well. Again, using standard business problem. For some people, this is easier than a written exercise. For some people, this is harder than a written exercise because you're actually having to present to your peer about how you've solved the business problem. This really revolves around, testing your problem solving and presentation skills. Role plays. Interestingly, this came up quite recently for somebody that I was preparing one-to-one, but these are pretty rare outside of sales roles. One of the big 4 professional services, about 6 years ago, they used to use this quite a lot. The reason why role plays are rare is they require a lot of human resources. So you'd have to hire in actors or you'd have to use people. They're quite slow because it's all one-to-one work. So these days it's quite rare outside of sales roles. So you can expect this, say you're going for a business development role, a sales role, a recruitment consultant role. Role plays are quite, normal. And generally you simulate an exercise, which is either, you and someone else, someone's a client, a colleague, or a manager. You're having to resolve a problem. You're having to present about a solution. You're having to get a client to buy something or buy into someone. And you generally, you present a solution and you resolve a problem. And this is obviously a test of your client facing and sales skills and your ability to persuade and influence others. So, a final interview, I would say less companies use final interviews than they have done in the past. This used to be absolutely standard. You would need to have a final interview before you went and got a job. This was sort of 7, 8 years ago when I was training people. Now I'd say like half of the assessment centers have a final interview and half don't. This tends to be a longer form interview. It'll be with a manager, a director, or a partner. And it's really a variety of skills being tested in the interview. Though they do tend to be different as you progress through the interview, but initially they're quite similar to the first round interview. And finally, we've got our presentations. So these could be pre-prepared or put together on the day. Some companies will give you some material and tell you to prepare something. They might even ask you to prepare a PowerPoint, which you should submit before the day, or you might have to put this together on the day and then present it to a member of staff. And potentially also answer some questions. This is all about presentation skills. So generally you tend to find this where you're doing a lot of client work or you're going to be expected to deal with clients. Presenting and pitching is a really crucial skill for some job roles. So how should you get ready? Well, you should research likely exercises, practice case studies, learn how to write business reports. That's a crucial skill. Make sure your online test scores are up to scratch. Practice presentations and prepare for interviews. Or based upon like phenomenal demand for our audience, you could just buy our Acing Assessment Centers bundle, which you can find in the link in the description below. So this is built on 9 years of experience from me of training and assessing over 800 assessment centers. There are free practice exercises. We cover how to prepare for all of the 7 exercises. There are handouts, cheat sheets, frameworks, video walkthroughs for the exercises, and also precise instructions for exactly what and how to prepare for any assessment center. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, hit like, drop us a comment down below. Let us know what other videos you'd like to make about assessment centers. Have you got an assessment center coming up? What was your experience? Have you just had an assessment center, and what is it that you wish that you've been told beforehand? Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I wish you the best of luck in getting a job. See you later.